school where you see a child on enough of a regular basis that you can ask about their day. You don't have to raise your hand, but okay, so I wrote this because this is for you to take back to your school environment. I want to give you something you can use, because in what I'm learning about being an attorney, sometimes there's not a lot attorneys can tell you that you can use. And I don't want it to be that way. I want you to understand my perspectives, because in the end you should question my perspectives, and then we should see together like how we can unite and work for the common goal, which is stopping these two things on the agenda. I've already said I'm a teacher, so you kind of know what that's about. I became an attorney probably for a lot of reasons, but when the laws stopped letting me teach, and what that means, and I'll pick New York, Chicago, and Detroit, those were my three big districts. You teach people based on who they are. And for a child, developmentally, that makes sense, but also it's just culture, okay? So when that just didn't exist anymore, and I'm not acting like, oh, I'm so good, I went to law school. That's the other perspective I want to share, is my skin color, right? That's the privileged class in this country. And every time I speak on this issue, race has got to be a part of it. Whether it's done in a threatening or a non-threatening racial way. You heard in the video the allusions to racism. So there's overt racism and institutional racism. And yes, I know I worked hard, but I'm not going to kid anyone and say, well, I just woke up one day and it was so easy for me to go to law school. No, there's challenges that I would say in the male-female world, female tab, and I would say in the skin color world, or whatever we want to call it in our country, if you're a majority, and that means cultural majority and economic majority, you're going to get your way a little bit easier. Those are my perspectives, and I want to say that whatever differences that we have, or how we look at things, whatever your job might be, come together in unity and we will win on these issues. I think the EAA grassroots have done a really good job showing that. We branched out all over the state. Okay, so the two things I have are school-to-prison pipeline and dismantling of public education. I'm also going to give out my phone number, and the reason I'm going to do that is because what I do is part of my practice, and this is not legal advice, this is not, telling you what to do in a lawsuit. The law is for people. That's what I thought when I went to law school. People made civil rights law. It's people. So if you have a question about, like, where do I find this law, and that sounds like a really simple question, but sometimes you can do a lot as citizens. You can call me on my cell phone, which is 313-693-5155. Again. 313-693. Yeah, good. Thank you. 5155. See, because I think law should be accessible. Okay.
And Tracy.
Tracy Peters, yes. Okay, going on with prison pipeline. I apologize for reading, but sometimes I have to sit down a lot now in my job and write. And I wrote it in more of a note-taking format, so I'm glad you noticed. Okay, basically the school-to-prison pipeline refers to policies and practices that push out children, especially the most at risk, out of class and into the juvenile and criminal justice systems. And for me as a teacher, at risk always meant raised in foster care, special needs children. I had a lot of kids enter the pipeline that way. And then also in New York City, a lot of homeless children that really, really had no economic resources. This is what you need to look for in your schools. School-to-prison pipeline has 4 parts. Number 1, they need a failing school. But if someone tells you you're involved with a failing school, ask yourself who's defining failing. Okay, I'm going to get to that later about corporate message. There's zero tolerance policies. Excuse me, Michigan has a state law, zero tolerance. I brought the law. Anyone interested can see it after. What I mean by this is, laws that just kick kids out of school, suspensions and expulsions, and people say, well, we have a zero tolerance policy. Number 3, look for an increased police presence in school hallways. I'm not saying DPS, I'm just saying that sometimes schools do this even with parent volunteers. But the money's spent on policing, it's not spent on teaching, it's not spent on resources for the kids. The 4th thing that goes along with this is sometimes districts, Detroit is one of them unfortunately, they'll close their public alternative schools, and they'll contract with private entities for disciplinary alternative schools. In my opinion, it's a district's way of not following their obligation to be a public district and educate all kids. How do we fix the school-to-prison pipeline? Really simplistic fourth-grade teacher answer here. You gotta have state laws that empower principals, that empower educational leaders to take control of their buildings. Now, I know we have an emergency manager law. I live in Detroit. I've always lived in Detroit. I mean, I'm subject to the same laws, but in my dreams, I go to Lansing and make the best case for a law. That's how you do it. You keep principals in buildings. Principals know the teachers. They know the kids. They're community. Because with the dismantling of public education, what this prison pipeline does, it destroys neighborhoods. It just doesn't close public schools. It's horrible. And I want to say, this isn't my area of practice as a lawyer. I really work hard on making laws make sense curriculum-wise. I mean, this is my goal, okay? We have a million laws about how to run schools, but kids aren't graduating, okay, really? And they're not passing to the next grade. Do you think you could talk to educators? Do you think you could talk to parents? Do you think you could make an effort to come to communities and talk to people about why it's failing? So school-to-prison pipeline, I would refer you, even Google it. I think the ACLU has done some really outstanding work with it. They presented a forum at the law school at the Keith Center when I was a student there, and we brought in a lot of kids to talk about that. Okay, the dismantling of public education. I'm just going to read it because I know there's a time thing here. The overall strategy. You have a failing school, a whole bunch of failing schools together destroy public education. Or they water it down to the point where the state can say that they offer public education. I mean, for example, I'd have you look at our state constitution. It's Article 8, Section 1. Michigan, and people will argue that this is such a great state constitution. All it says is that the means of education shall forever be encouraged. Well, I can encourage you to get a haircut, too. I mean, what about a mandate? I just find it very, a point I'd like to argue. I don't think it's a very strong state law. The overall strategy, which you saw in the Journey for Justice video, if federal and state laws are enacted to make public schools, and I'm going to add public entities to this because I think local government is under attack as well, look like they are failing by virtue of design, the public sees failure because our message is controlled by media, controlled content. Then the public sentiment goes against it. Makes it very hard to pass new laws or run platforms that support the concept of public. I guess basically, here's how it works. The law is passed. I'm torn. I really just want it tough, but I want to give you some information too. I'm just going to read it. Here's the types of laws you want to look at. Okay, curriculum, funding, employment laws. Our Michigan charter laws, I want to be really clear about, public charter schools versus public schools. They are public schools in the sense that they're allowed to deliver public education, but our laws are so broad, okay? You can pretty much open up a store for any reason. I mean, in Detroit it is full of them. Right now we have a lot of laws they're trying to pass, and some have been passed, allowing for alternative certification for teachers. Sometimes this leads to not qualified personnel in the classroom. Anti-organized labor laws, okay? Labor unions have historically employed a great number of women and minorities, okay? I mean, I credit my employment as a teacher to a labor union. If you destroy a labor union, you really have a lot more selection over who your personnel is. That's not a public school. Why is the strategy successful? Because people with inherited wealth, culturally and economically, don't want to concede power. I mean, that's really what this is all about, okay? It's about power. And I tried to give you a point, like what I would tell my parents is, if you've got power, how do you counter that? Well, I would hope that you'll support your local public schools. Here's my DPS pin. I'm not a DPS paid employee, but I support it. And businesses that share your values, okay? Businesses in your community, in our community. The same powers define a failing school. So if you're going to school or someone comes and they're saying at dinner, question that administration. Why is the school failing? What are we looking at? MEEP scores? What does that mean? You guys don't have enough personnel in the state to score them. No, it's just about, like, what can we get people to buy? What can we get them to believe? You know, and understand that the overall strategy, and again, you may disagree with me on this, if we start criticizing our public entities, and I mean government, I mean school districts, because, you know, think of the bus drivers in Detroit. I'm always thinking of them, because I did work at City of Detroit, too. Why did they have the routes they do, or why did they go through some of the troubles? Because they're not funded properly. But if we start criticizing everything that's public, the governor can say, well, there you go. Even people in Detroit don't think the public things work. It's just that I know things can go wrong based, you know, public school teachers, bus drivers, but it's the system. It's not, they're making us attack one another. I mean, that happened to my union. That happened to unions with right to work. I'm dead convinced of that. People were questioning dues. Oh, we don't want to do it. We do. Well, what happened? That was pretty significant. So I would just say that. Remember that we're a team. I guess I'll just make one last point, because this is one devastating thing for public school closure. Traditional public schools, like the kind that are in my neighborhoods, maybe your neighborhoods, they don't treat parents differently. You know, information is there for you when you walk in the door, and it has to be by law. Neighborhoods are built around traditional public schools. Kids can walk there, neighbors take an investment in safe travel to school. A foundation doesn't have to come in and say, well, you know, we understand that the neighbors aren't really invested. Again, scripted message. Neighbors are invested, because chances are they went there, their parents went there, and their grandparents there. And also the school choice with charters, you know, it's not really a choice when you don't have a car or work full-time at an inflexible job that won't let you leave to learn about all our state's wonderful opportunities, because school choice is another word we hear a lot. You know, the young lady in the Journey for Justice video said it best. It's really racism. And that word, you know, I don't know if it makes you uncomfortable, it makes people uncomfortable. They got to hear it, they got to say it. Racism doesn't have to mean, you know, I'm calling you a name. It can be inherited racism. You know, the money in this country, why do people have it the way they do? Question that. And, you know, definitely if I can ever help you out, like find a law about, because I think you all are your own best advocates, please feel free to give me a call. Sorry, I kind of rambled all over this.
That's okay. Thank you. She helps us a lot legally, and she has been helping out on the J. Rue Campbell case, okay? Jeff Edison is the attorney for J. Rue Campbell, and his partner was Chokwe Lumumba, which was part of Keep the Vote, No Takeover. Okay, and if you see on your agenda, we're going to his homegoing this weekend. Okay, now, this is your time. I know there's lots of questions. Everybody's got something to say.